Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is Veer Maheshwar Charitable Trust Latur, MS India, organizing daily international webinar series. In this series, the speakers from India and abroad are invited. They are delivering their speeches every day on a new topic. And this series is running from last 5 years. It's a daily series, and this series is recognized with the Asia Book of Record, India Book of Record, and International Book of Records. This is because of the Women Empowerment series. If you see the series of the speakers blind and invited, mostly are women resource persons. So this series was registered as a Women Empowerment series. Today we have invited Dr. Shalini Acharya Madam, who is PhD in management, lawyer, and communication specialist at Bengaluru, Karnataka, India. Her qualifications are PhD, MBA, MA in English, MA Psychology, MA Political Science, and BI. So we are fortunate that the speakers are accepting our invitation, those who are renowned and expert in their field. And today's speaker will speak on communication with emotional intelligence, a 21st century skills. I welcome you, ma'am, from my organization and all the participants, those who are joined here. I wish all the best to you for the speech. We are eager to listen your speech on the topic communication with emotional intelligence, a 21st century skill. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hello and welcome to the International Webinar Series. I'm Dr. Shalini Acharya, a lawyer, an academician, and a mentor. Now, I currently serve as a faculty at the School of Management, Presidency University, Bangalore, and I bring with me about 15 years of postgraduate teaching experience, having taught at universities, deemed to be universities, affiliated colleges across Bangalore. My professional journey began as a practicing lawyer in the City Civil Court, Secunderabad, and the High Court of Hyderabad. I later transitioned into the field of English language training before moving into management education, where I currently teach and mentor postgraduate students. Academically, like Sir said, I have a multidisciplinary background. I'm a law graduate and I hold postgraduate degrees in psychology, political science, management, which strongly inform my teaching, research, and mentoring approach. And I'm here to provide you with insights into emotional intelligence. Now, let me begin today's talk by expressing my heartfelt appreciation to Veer Maheshwar Charitable Trust, Latur, India, for the commendable work they are doing by organizing this international webinar series, more specifically to Dr. Betkar, who has been playing a pivotal role in reaching out to distinguished speakers both at the national and international level. So, without any further ado, let me begin with today's talk. Now, okay, I hope this is moving. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, emotional intelligence, a purview. Now, let me begin by asking a question to the audience. Have you ever seen an absolutely correct message? When I say correct message, it could be factually correct, grammatically perfect, professionally written, and yet it has ended in a conflict. I'm sure most of us have. And it's confusing, isn't it? The reason is simple. Human communication is not just logical, it is emotional. A message can be perfectly correct. Still, it may trigger defensiveness, hurt, resistance of not what has been said, but because of the tone, the tenor, the pitch of the voice, the context, and the perceived intent. So, in today's world, we have this world is that of constant emails, WhatsApp messages, online meetings, hybrid work, we are more connected than ever, yet less emotionally connected. This is why in the 21st century, success depends on not what we say, but how we say it, when we say it, and what emotion we say it with. That is where emotional intelligence in communication is not a soft skill anymore, but it is a critical life skill, leadership, and a career skill. Because communication without emotional intelligence is just information, but communication with emotional intelligence is actually influence. And that is what we will be exploring in our talk this evening. Let me begin with the Indian societal scenario and let us look at some distressing news. India reports over 1.7 lakh suicides every year. This is as per a recent report in the NCRB. And one of the leading causes of death among youths and young age adults is suicide. Now, what triggers suicide? Family problems, relationship stress, they consistently rank as the top causes. These numbers, what I am saying, is not just statistics. They actually reflect unmanaged emotion, unresolved conflicts, and an absence of emotional coping skills. So let us look at the marriage and relationship status in India. Now we have marriage related stress, separation, family conflicts. These are significant contributors to the level of emotional distress in India. Now, in fact, this morning I came across a very interesting article in the Times of India, Times of India dated to 18th January 2026. They say that divorce rates may actually appear low, but the level of marital dissatisfaction is rather high. This is especially in urban India. In fact, it was titled The Rise of the Quiet uh, to skip the drama and the diva in Times of India, titled dated today. Okay, so data from the National Family Health Survey says that less than 1% of the women and less than 0.3% of the men prefer to get divorced. Now, what men are typically worried is, especially in urban India, they are worried that divorce remains an exception rather than the rule in Indian society, primarily because there is a certain stigma which is attached to the concept of divorce. Many men worry about maintenance, they worry about domestic violence proceedings being initiated against them. So, what typically happens is couples they stay married, but there is a certain level of emotional disconnect among them. When people lack the skills to understand, express, and control their emotions, relationships suffer. Even though the marriages do not end legally, there is a certain level of emotional disconnect among the couples. So, what is the missing skill here? Needless to say, it is that of emotional intelligence. So, at the heart of rising emotional distress is not just stress, but the inability to handle stress emotionally. So, now comes the question, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand. When I use this word understand, it talks about self awareness, the ability to manage your emotions. Managing is the ability to regulate your emotions, the ability to use emotions effectively, your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. So, if I were to put it in a very simple manner, emotional intelligence is equal to self awareness, self control, motivation, and empathy. Now, To go to the origin of the word emotional intelligence, it was coined by two researchers, Peter Salovey and John Mayer. And this happened not very long ago, in the last decade of the last century, that is in the 1990s. They came up with a very interesting article on emotional intelligence. But if you Google out this word emotional intelligence, what you will come across is a very popular international psychologist name, namely Daniel Goleman. Because in the year 1995, he came up with a very interesting article on emotional intelligence, why it can matter more than IQ. Now, let me revisit this last decade, the last century, where even in India, IQ was rated to be a sure factor for success. That means if a person typically was a grad from, say, IIT or IIM, such a person was seen to have arrived because it was perceived that this person has a very high level of IQ. However, thanks to the intervention of international psychologists like Daniel Goleman, who reiterated the importance of emotional intelligence, now our society has understood the importance of emotional intelligence, which is much more required than just IQ. So EQ is rated much more highly as compared to the IQ or the intelligence quotient. So for academicians, I have just given a small definition of the word emotional intelligence. It talks about the capacity for recognizing one's own feelings and those of others through empathy, for motivating ourselves and for managing emotions well in ourselves as well as our relationship. So, this is what communicating with emotional intelligence is all about. It means thinking beyond words and communicating with awareness, sensitivity, empathy, respect. So, actually, if it is not soft communication, emotional intelligence, using emotional intelligence in communicating is actually smart communication. Now, let me just take you through an understanding of these components, beginning with awareness. What do you mean by awareness? Awareness is being conscious of your own emotions, the tone, the tenor, the pitch of the voice, the body language that you use, and the intent of the person while communicating. Let me just substantiate with an example. A manager may feel irritated because of a very stressful, tight deadline. But instead of showing irritation at a team member, the manager says, "Look, I'm under pressure today. So let me explain this calmly." So look at the emotional intelligence at work here. The manager recognizes her emotion before it affects her communication. The second one is about sensitivity. Now, what is the meaning of sensitivity? It means being mindful of the emotional state, the background, and the situation of the other person. Now, let me again substantiate this with an example. In our profession, a faculty member notices that a student is struggling academically after a personal loss. So instead of publicly questioning that student, the faculty member invites the student and speaks privately to the student and says that, "Look, I've noticed that you've been very quiet lately. Let's talk if you need some support." So, where is this emotional intelligence at work here? Communication is adjusted to protect the student's feelings. Next, we talk about empathy. Now, the technical definition of empathy is to step into the other person's shoes. So, it is basically the ability to understand and share the other person's emotions, to see the situation from their perspective. So, let me give you an example for this as well. An employee, suppose he misses a deadline because of a family emergency. And how does the superior, his supervisor, respond? He says, "Look, I understand it may have been a very difficult time for you. Let us work together. Let us reset this timeline. So you see the emotional intelligence at work here. The speaker validates feelings before focusing on the tasks. Then you go to the final component, which talks about respect. Now, what is respect? When you value the dignity, the opinion, the emotions of others, even there may be a disagreement or there may be a conflict, but you still show dignity, you express respect for the other person's opinion. For example, there may be a team disagreement. So, what does the leader say? He says, look, I may not agree with your view, but I appreciate your perspective that you have brought to this discussion. So, where is the emotional intelligence at work here? Differences are addressed without any kind of disrespect or dismissal. So, in simple terms, what I'm trying to communicate here is communicating with emotional intelligence is not just about saying the right things, it is saying it in the right way, at the right time, with the right emotional understanding. So, this was what was, these were the components of emotional intelligence. Now, why is emotional intelligence a 21st century skill? The professional scenario. Until now, I was discussing about Indian society, the familial situation, and how it impacts us as a society. Now, I will take you through the professional scenario. Now, it is known to all of us that emotional intelligence is directly linked with employability and leadership. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. It can process data, but it is only we humans who can actually process emotions. Now, let us look at some of the top skills that employers value today. First one that scores is emotional intelligence. Next one is, of course, communication. The third one is adaptability. The fourth one is collaboration. So typically, your degrees may get you the job, but your emotional intelligence helps you keep your job. Now, let me throw some light on each of these components, beginning with emotional intelligence. A lot has already been discussed about emotional intelligence. What is it? The ability to recognize, to understand, to manage, and use your emotions as well as the other person's emotions effectively. Why it matters? Emotional intelligence helps people to stay calm under pressure, to build trust, and to handle relationship maturely. Now, let me give you an example. There is a manager who receives a negative feedback in a meeting. Now, instead of becoming very defensive and reacting, she listens and reflects and responds very calmly. She says, I understand the concern. Let me work on improving this. Here, what happens is emotion is acknowledged, it is not allowed to control the behavior. The next skill is communication. Now, all of us know what is communication? It is the ability to express ideas, to actively listen, and ensure the intended message is correctly understood. Now, there are four communication skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. These are the four communication skills. And then you talk about types of communication. Broadly, you can classify that into verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal communications means communication with words. Non-verbal, there are different types of non-verbal communication. That is words, that is communication bereft of, without words. Now, typically you have kinesics. What is kinesics? Kinesics talks about non-verbal communication, your facial expression, your smile, your eye contact, your body movements. That is kinesics for you. Then you have something called proxemics. Now, what is proxemics? The distance that you maintain while communicating actually tells the level of comfort that you share with that person. That is proxemics. Then you have paralanguage. Paralanguage is like language or similar language. That is when you speak, the how part of the communication, that is the tone, tenor, pitch of the voice, that is like communication of paralanguage. Then you have time language, you have color language. So, there are various types of non-verbal communication. Now, why it matters? Of course, good communication prevents misunderstanding, and of course, it improves teamwork. So, typically, if you see a manager, instead of saying a team leader or a manager, he may not say, finish this quickly. How he would say is, look, please complete this work by Friday so that we can review it on another day, on Monday perhaps. So, there is clarity in the message, clarity in the expectation, and there is less ambiguity or confusion. The third skill is about adaptability. Now, what is adaptability? It talks about adjusting behavior, adjusting thinking, and the attitude to as a response to change, the right attitude. When you are able to respond to change, and all of us know that change is the only constant. So, in a dynamic environment that we all live in, when you have very rigid thinking that results in failure, actually, adaptability leads to growth and survival. Now, we all are aware that during COVID, uh, academicians, faculty members, they were so used to offline teaching. Now, within a very short period of time, they had to transition to online teaching. So instead of resisting, majority of the faculty members, they learned digital tools, they redesigned activities so that students were virtually engaged. So change was accepted and it was managed very positively. Then the fourth trait talks about collaboration. Now, what is collaboration? The ability to work effectively with others, where you value diverse ideas to achieve a common goal. And why it matters? Most organizational success is achieved through teams, not through individuals. Now, let me give you a small example to explain this. In a group project, suppose I were to tell you that now students try to put up a kind of a presentation. So one student may be excellent at research, another student may be good at presentation, another person may be good at coordination, another one may be tech savvy. So when they collaborate with each other based on their strengths, then you see excellent collaboration. So, like I said, I reiterate, your degree gets you the job, but emotional intelligence helps you keep it. Now, why this topic matters today? Let us look at the 21st century reality. First one is hybrid and remote work. We have multi generational workplaces. There is very high level of stress, there is high burnout, and there is emotional fatigue, and there is constant digital communication. So, what is the problem here? People are connected but not emotionally connected. So, what is the solution? You communicate with emotional intelligence. Now, let me take you through some of this reality with a little bit of explanation, starting with hybrid and remote work. Now, work happens through screens. So what happens is we miss the facial expressions, we miss the body language, we miss the tone of the voice. So as a result, misunderstandings become very easy and trust becomes very difficult to build. So when you see emotional intelligence in action, self awareness is very important to manage frustration, and empathy is very important to understand either a delayed response or silence. A quick example to explain this. Suppose there is a team member in a hybrid or a remote work. A team member keeps the camera off and the team member speaks very little. Now, it is very easy for the supervisor or the manager to jump to conclusion and say that, look, this team member is not interested, he's showing disinterest. But a person with a high level of emotional intelligence will contact this team member and say that, look, I've noticed that you've been quiet. Is there anything I can support you with? So you see, emotional intelligence builds that emotional distance when physical presence is missing. So typically, in this situation, as I explained before, it is very easy for a team member to say that, look, this person is irresponsible. But a person with emotional intelligence will say, let me check. Maybe this person is overwhelmed, or maybe this person is facing connectivity issues. So, this is where emotional intelligence plays a very important role. Next, you talk about multi generational workforces. Now, when in this workplace, we have almost four generations, beginning with boomers, baby boomers, then you have Gen X, then you have millennials, and of course, you have Gen Z. You have four generations working together, and their working style is very distinct from each other. They have different communication styles, they have different values, and they have different expectations from their workplace. So, when you have emotional intelligence in action, then you respect these differences. You adapt communication style without being judgmental. Now, let me substantiate this with a very quick example. A senior prefers to call up, where a Gen Z employee prefers WhatsApp. So a person with low emotional intelligence would say that, look, this generation is lazy, which is definitely not the case. Now, a person with high emotional intelligence will say, let us agree on a common mode which works for both. So a senior person prefers face-to-face discussion. Person from the Gen Z prefers quick messages. So that's understandable. A leader with EI will balance both. Important messages are discussed personally, routine update via WhatsApp or Teams. So EI turns diversity into strengths and not a cause for fiction. So then you talk about high stress, burnout, emotional fatigue. Now, typically we have people who work for long hours, there is job insecurity, there is constant pressure, and you have this blurred work life boundaries. These are all draining out emotional energy. So, when you have emotional intelligence in action, there is a certain level of emotional regulation. So you're able to recognize burnout early within yourself as well as with the others. So let me substantiate again with an example. Suppose an employee snaps during a meeting. So, what will a person with low emotional intelligence do? The person will immediately reprimand. Whereas a person with a certain level of emotional intelligence will say, look, you seem stressed out. Would you like to talk to me about this? And then the final one, which talks about constant digital communication with respect to emails, WhatsApp, and Teams. Messages nowadays lack tone and context. A simple sentence may sound rude, it may sound cold, it may sound aggressive. So, when you have emotional intelligence in action, you typically pause before acting. That's very important. You choose your words consciously. Now, suppose you have a message which you receive and which says that call me immediately. So, a person with low EI will typically panic, or the person will say, what does this person think? No, he will show anger. But a person with high emotional intelligence will clarify calmly. Sure, is this urgent? Or can I just get back to you in 10 minutes? So a person with a high level of emotional intelligence will be able to respond, not react. So, now let me take you through the 5 pillars of emotionally intelligent communication. The first one talks about self awareness. Know yourself before you speak. If you don't understand your emotions, then you can't manage your emotions. So, see, the examples I've given here is you're irritated, suppose, after a meeting, and you send a very sharp mail. What will be the result? There will be a conflict, and if there is an existing conflict, it will only escalate. Since I'm from academia, suppose there is a faculty member. The person feels irritated after a long session of classes. We typically teach for 3 hours, 4 hours in a day. You feel irritated. So instead of snapping at students or colleagues, the faculty member realizes that, look, I'm not angry with them. I'm basically mentally exhausted. So this awareness helps the person to pause and respond calmly rather than reacting emotionally. So any response with emotional intelligence calls for pause and you name the emotion. What is the emotion I'm going through? Is it irritation or is it actually that I am tired with my own work? So what do? You respond. You don't react. So, what is the idea to ponder here? Emotionally intelligent speakers respond, they do not react. The second one talks about self regulation. Self regulation is it talks about managing your own emotions. So basically, it talks about controlling impulsive reactions, staying calm under pressure, and responding thoughtfully. I've provided some techniques which perhaps we could implement when we need to respond, not react. So, when someone talks to you, perhaps in a very, overwhelming way, you're feeling overwhelmed, intimidating manner, you take 10 seconds, you take a brief pause, you deep breathe before you react, before you respond. You rewrite emotional messages before sending. It's possible that you receive a message which is very, very provocative. So you rewrite emotional messages before you actually send it. So now I would like to ask, may all of you who are listening, how many emails would we regret less if we had waited for 10 minutes? So, like I said, I already I've been giving a lot of examples. Similarly, I would take the example of a HR manager here. Suppose this manager receives harsh criticism during a meeting. Instead of becoming defensive, he quietly listens and says, look, I understand this concern. Let me review this and get back to you with a solution. So, what is he doing? He's able to manage his emotion and he's also able to maintain his professionalism. The third one talks about empathy. Empathy, like I said, it is not agreeing. When you say I'm empathetic with you, it doesn't mean that I agree with you. It means that I understand you. Because the technical meaning of empathy is to put yourself in the other person's shoe and to think like the other person. So you don't necessarily agree with that person, but you understand what that person is going through, especially in mentoring. This trait is very important. So employee suppose says that I'm feeling overwhelmed. Now a person with low EI will say that look, everyone is busy. It's not only you. But a person with a high level of emotional intelligence will say, yes, that sounds stressful. Let us talk. So people normally forget words, but they never forget how you made them feel. So now taking a student's example, which I'm more comfortable talking to you about, a student, suppose a student is performing very well, who usually performs well, suddenly stops participating in the class. And the faculty notices this change. And the person, she approaches the student and says, like, you seem quieter than usual. Are you okay? This empathetic approach helps to build trust and emotion. The fourth one talks about social awareness, social skills. So I've used this word, read the room. So it typically involves body language, the tone, cultural sensitivity, context. See, when you have to communicate the same message, the delivery may be different because when you give a feedback to a student, it is different from the feedback that you give a colleague, is different from the feedback that you give a senior. It should be communicated differently because the audience is more important as compared to your argument. So I will give you an example for this. A team leader notices tension between two employees. So instead of blaming either side, what does she do? She facilitates a conversation where both sides can express concern and they can find a common ground. Thereby, you are able to restore cooperation. So, this next slide talks about relationship management, where we build bridges, we don't build walls. So, emotionally intelligent communicators, they're able to handle conflict very gracefully and they're able to give very constructive feedback and they're able to maintain dignity during disagreement. So the golden rule to ponder here is correct the issue, be issue oriented, not person oriented. So let us see some of the scenarios and see how emotional intelligence is in action. So you have a person with low emotional intelligence who says that at a workplace, a person with low emotional intelligence will tell you, look, this work is unacceptable. But a person with high emotional intelligence will say, let's review what went wrong. Let us collaborate and improve it together. In leadership, a person with low EI will typically engage in authority based communication. But a person with high EI will engage with trust based communication. In the digital communication mode, emails without tone will definitely lead to misunderstanding. So, what is the rule of emotional intelligence? If the message is emotional, if you are emotionally charged, don't type it. Talk it over. That's a much better way. So I have actually uh, brought out a compare and contrast between communication with EI and communication without emotional intelligence. So without emotional intelligence, a person talks at people, but with emotional intelligence, you talk with people. Here, without EI, you focus on facts. Here, you focus facts with feelings. Here, it triggers resistance when you are bereft of emotional intelligence. It triggers resistance. Here, it encourages cooperation and builds trust. Here, you get compliance. But there, with emotional intelligence, you don't just get compliance, you also get commitment. Without emotional intelligence, it creates a distance. But with emotional intelligence, you are able to build a connection. So, this is what it is. I will finally end with certain common barriers to EI communication. The first one being ego. What does ego say? It is about winning, not understanding. See, ego makes communication, you try to prove a point rather than you solve a problem. You try to prove a point. A manager may typically say, I am the boss, do it my way. What will be the result there? The result is the task may get done, but what is lost is trust is lost, motivation is lost. So, emotionally intelligent communicators choose understanding over dominance. The second barrier that comes in the way of emotional intelligent communication is stress. Now, typically, if you have observed, emotions hijack logic. If you are emotionally overwhelmed, you're not able to think logically. So, under stress, the brain shifts to survival mode. So, what happens is we react. Instead of responding, we just react. So, after a bad day, you may snap at a family member over a small issue. Later, you think, why did I say this? So, what does emotionally intelligent communication tell you? It tells you to pause. It tells you to control your emotions and then communicate. That is about handling stress. Many of the world problems are based on assumptions. We think we know, but we don't. Now, you know what? Many times we have certain fears, we have certain biases, we have certain past examples. So these assumptions fill these gaps. Suppose a colleague doesn't reply to your message. Now, how do you think? You feel that this person has disrespect for you. But they must be in a meeting, they must be busy. So here, high emotional intelligence replaces assumptions with clarification. Now, lack of listening is a major barrier to emotional intelligence. What is listening? When you process what you hear, that is listening. Most people listen to reply, not to understand. So, suppose someone says, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and a person without emotional intelligence will tell him, oh, you should manage your time better. But a person with emotional intelligence will say, he will focus on the feelings behind the words, not just the facts. Then the final one is emotional fatigue. See, sometimes you feel that I have nothing left to give. There is continuous pressure, there are deadlines, emotional labor drains. So typically, you have a very patient teacher or a manager. They also become very dismissive. They become emotionally irritable. So when a person has high level of emotional intelligence, they recognize that self-care is essential for healthy communication. So now, most communication problems are not language problems, they are emotional problems. Words are rarely the real issue. Unmanaged emotions create misunderstanding, conflict, and silence. The same sentence said in anger versus calm creates two different outcomes. So I will conclude today's talk by saying when emotions are unmanaged, communication breaks down no matter how good our vocabulary is. Thank you so much to the audience for your kind and for your time. Sunday evening, I understand. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Wow, I see so many of you. Uh, Thank you so much for your appreciation as well.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini Madam.
Thank you, sir.
Very
Thank you very
effective,
much.
very effective communication skills, and this topic is
Thank you,
how
sir.
it is useful in our offices, corporate, or anything where, and how it is helpful to have progress of organization. What are its type? In which way we can treat others? How this communication skill can affect our everything,
Right.
which can do the better relations in family and also in office. Thank you. Now I request participants to unmute and they can discuss with our speaker on today's topic.
I see many of you appreciative, highly appreciative. First of all, I'm really grateful that you have spared your time on a Sunday evening and you have been a wonderful audience. and you're also, responding so positively to my talk. I'm truly overwhelmed, and I'm really grateful for your words of appreciation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. In
Thank
future
you.
also, you will be invited here as a speaker on a different
Sure,
topic. You are very
sure.
welcome. Thank you for supporting us to this Women Empowerment series. I request you can share few speakers from your content, those who are willing to
Sure.
deliver the talk. Thank you,
Very
ma'am.
well,
Thank
sir.
you.
Very
Thank you.
well, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.